I love going on road trips. It's very enjoyable, and it's been enjoyable for me ever since I've been a little kid, but in particular way, it started becoming something I look forward to when I was in 7th or 8th grade. You see, my brother Mark was a little bit older than I was, and he was in college at that time, and he went to the College of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois, and he played football for them. And so my dad would always try to make it to every single home game that he played in. And so Friday night, I would go to my dad when he got home from work, and I'd say, "Dad, can I go with you tomorrow morning to go see Mark play football?" And my dad would always tell me, "Alex, is your homework done?" And I'd usually lie and say yes, because it never really was, or was it ever done on Monday morning for that part. But anyways, we'd go, and he'd say, "Is your homework done?" "Yes." And then we'd leave on a Saturday morning, bright and early. And we'd drive all the way to Joliet, Illinois. Now, for the most part, it was always my dad, my brother Luke, and I. Now, I have 3 sisters, but they never seem to want to go with. I don't know why, probably because they hate football or something like that. But we'd drive to Joliet, Illinois. We'd watch my brother Mark play. Sometimes they'd win, sometimes they'd lose. We'd go out to eat with them, and then we'd turn around and come home that night. There was no such thing as an overnight trip to Joliet, Illinois. It was you go there, you watch the game, and you come back. But I loved it. And the reason why I loved it was because I was able to spend time with my dad and one of my brothers in a unique way. You see, whenever you go on a road trip with someone, you are forced to talk to them. And you talk to them about things you would never talk to them anywhere else, but unless you're spending 6 hours with them in the morning and 6 hours with them at night. And I look back at those days that I had my father around, and they were great conversations because we were able to share so much. But I also look back and I go, it was amazing how often the conversation would switch from one subject to the next, from 1 mile to the next. You know, we look today at the gospel, and once again we hear that Jesus is traveling. He's traveling with his disciples, and they get to a very serious conversation. Jesus tells them, he says that he is going to have to give up his life. Let's look at this. Mark chapter 9. He says, "The Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him. And 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise." Now imagine being in a car with someone, but this time imagine being on a road, and someone says this to you. Of course, you're going to be astonished. And the disciples, the apostles, were astonished, so much so that they were afraid to ask questions, and they did not understand it. And whenever we don't understand something, what do we usually do? We change topics. And what do the apostles do on this trip to Capernaum, to their homeland? They brought up a totally different subject, one that seems foreign. They started discussing amongst themselves, who is the greatest? Now, they've just been told that the one that they are following, the one that they are on this road trip with, is going to have to die, and they can't handle it. And so instead they start talking about something else, and something that's just wrong. They question each other. Who amongst them is the greatest? Now, Jesus can hear everything that they're saying, and eventually I'm sure they change the conversation again. But they get there. They get to Capernaum, their destination at this time. Capernaum was kind of like Jesus' home during his public ministry. And he goes back to them and he says to them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" He knows that there's something going on because he heard them. He heard them, plus he's God, so of course he knows. But he asks them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" And they don't want to say it once again because once again they are afraid. So he has them sit down. This is very important to realize. Jesus has them sit down because now it's officially going to be a teaching. And he tells them, "Whoever wishes to be first among you, whoever wishes to be great among you, must be the last of all and the servant of all." And once again, the apostles, they just don't get it. They don't quite understand what he is saying. So Jesus tries to stress the point to them once again. He sees a little child, I'm guessing right around 1-year-old or something like that, and he takes this little child and he puts it in his hands. And he says to them, "Whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me." You know, usually in the Gospels, when Jesus is talking about little children, what he is telling us is that we are called to be like little children, that we are called to have faith of the little children. But in this passage, in Mark chapter 9, verse 37, what he is saying is that this little child can do nothing, nothing at all, unless someone serves him or her. But he says that it is worth it. Why? Because this child is precious in God's eyes, but it needs someone. It needs someone to serve him or her. Now, of course, Jesus sees this not only in this little child, but Jesus saw this in us. God saw this in us, his children. And this is why he sent down Jesus for us, so that he could serve us. When we look at this and we see who is the greatest of all time, who is the greatest human being ever to step foot on earth, we know that it is Jesus Christ. But why? Not just because he was God, which he is, but rather because he gave us the greatest gift. He gave us himself. Now we are called to be like him. We are called to serve him and also those who are entrusted to us. Now it's a given that we are going to serve the children that come from us. But what God is saying is not only to serve the little children, but to serve the children of faith as well. You know, today is Catechetical Sunday, at least here in this parish. In a little bit, we're going to have a blessing for all those who are teachers. And at the end of the Mass, we're going to have a blessing for all those who are parents and guardians of children who are going to experience faith formation this year. Now, in the directions for me, it told me that I'm supposed to have only the parents of the faith formation people stand up, but I think that's a false notion. You know why? Because each and every one of us is a parent, each and every one of us is a teacher to someone in the faith, even if we don't realize it. So at that time, what I'm going to do is ask everyone to stand up for the blessing, because we all need blessings. To do what? To go out and to serve. In the gospel today, Jesus saw the apostles missed it 2 times in a row. So he grabbed his children and he says, serve this child. How often do we miss it? How often do we miss it in our life where there is someone in front of us, a little child, someone on the side of the road, that coworker that keeps on asking you questions about the faith, but you are too afraid to answer? This is the child in your life. And what you are called to do, what we are called to do, is to serve them, to give of ourselves, to give of our wants, our needs, our desires, and to give them over to God. And when we do this, then what is going to happen? Then we will be great, because we will be with God in the kingdom of heaven.